Number 290 in your hymn book is I Am Thine, O Lord, and all 10 of us are going to sing. Right? Hey, stand with us. We're going to sing all four stanzas. Closer drawn to thee, draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. Consecrate me now to thy service, Lord, by the power of grace divine. Let my soul look up with a steadfast hope, and my will be lost in thine. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. Oh, the pure delight of a single hour that before thy throne I spent. And with thee, my God, I commune with friend with friend. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. There are depths of love that I cannot know till I cross the narrower sea. There are heights of joy that I may not reach till I rest in peace with thee. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. You only get a short welcoming time today because Lee wants you to come back very quick so he can have all the time he can get.
All right, so if we'll start moving back to our seats and getting ready. I'd like to start us with prayer concerns so I can pass these on to the church office and they can get printed for next week. Possibility it was of him, or it was of one of the Babylonian gods. And so, really, though, the likelihood is that it was of King Nebuchadnezzar himself. The king had the statue built in a place called Dura that still has that name today, so we have an idea of where it was. It's in the southeast of Babylon and has a large base or stand that has been found in that area, and so we have a general idea of where it is. Some believe it to be the base of the statue. The presence of all the governors and all of the other governmental officials that I mentioned in verses 1 through 7 kind of show the importance and how big this was. This was more than a political rally. This was a religious event. So you have all of the people and all of the titles and all of the others coming, and they're going to worship this statue at the sound of the music. The music played during the worship of the statue was the key to the king's ability to stir the emotions of the people and make it easy to manipulate them. This is not something that's unheard of in ancient times, especially your ancient empires. I now see why Nick chose me to do this one, because it has a lot of history in it, and I didn't notice that in my reading this week, but it does. And it's giving a lot of flashbacks to college. That's going to make me shaky. So, in verse 6, we read the punishment for refusing to worship the statue was death by fiery furnace. He had the three men worship the statue, they would have broken the second commandment from Exodus 24 through 5. You shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything between in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children up for the sin of the fathers to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. God had spoken about idol worship in the 10 Commandments, and the men had no reason to compromise themselves on this. They had bowed. No matter what excuse they had made, they would still have ruined their witness and broken their fellowship with God. So, what the king is forcing here is idolatry. And again, this is something you see throughout most of your ancient empires, even moving into the more modern ones, which includes Rome, is that the people that are in charge, your dictators, your Julius Caesars, your King Nebuchadnezzars, they want to be seen as the God, even though they're not. They want the people to worship them. They want to be able to rule over them. They want to emotionally manipulate them into that worship. And so we see that, and we all know the three men that are here. It's the story that we've all heard since we were very, very tiny little people in Sunday school: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So this is the beginning of what we know as the time of the Gentiles, as it's called when the Gentile kingdoms will rule the world. This time period begins with a universal religion worshiping a statue and ends with the same way in Revelation 13, 14, and 15. Because of the signs he was given power to do on behalf of the first beast, he deceived the inhabitants of the earth. He ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast, who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. He was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that it could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image be killed. Revelations 13, 14, and 15. So, we all know what is going on here. You're seeing the start of that time of the Gentiles. You're seeing that start of the universal religion. And we're in that until the end times, like Nick talked about this morning when he gave us Revelation in 5 minutes. We're at that point. And so we move on to verses 8 through 18. At this time, some astrologers came forward and denounced the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever. You have issued a decree, O king, that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, and pipes, and all kinds of music must fall down and worship the image of gold, and that whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into the blazing furnace. But there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, O king. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up." Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king, and Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold that I have set up?" Now when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." How many of you have it open right now? There's a difference when they're talking about Nebuchadnezzar's gods and the God they serve. What's that difference just in the writing? Capital G. Capital G. And so you can see where they're standing and where they're putting their mark and where they're taking their place. And they're saying that, nope, we're not doing it. And the people that had come, the astrologers or Chaldeans who told on them, are doing what we have told every child we've ever raised in our households not to do. Tattle on someone. And really, what's the motivation for them to be doing this? Are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego lowly inhabitants of Babylon? Or are they put in charge of a pretty large province of it? They're put in charge of a pretty large province, and those astrologers are a little bit jealous of them. And so they run and they tattle. Again, like we've told every child that we've raised in our houses not to do. I had that conversation with my 6-year-old the other day. We don't tattle. Unless it's dangerous, don't tattle. So, they were probably looking for any excuse to report the 3 men to the king, because every time in any political situation, if there's someone who's above you, most likely you're looking to jump that person. This was their way to jump those 3. If they brought this news, king killed them, suddenly there's 3 jobs open in a pretty important position in Babylon, and they could take it from them. Daniel's friends refused to worship the image. They had time to prepare for this challenge. They didn't hide it. They didn't shy away from it. When everybody hit the ground, they're still standing. They're still staying there. They're not moving. They've set where they're going to be. Their refusal to worship the image was a blatant act of treason that infuriated the king. Now, the king does have a soft spot for Daniel, and most likely a soft spot for Daniel's friends. So what does he do that's kind of out of the ordinary here? He gives them a second chance. He says, we're going to play the music again. If you don't this time, throwing you in. And they don't. The king, in disbelief, asked the men if it is true that they do not worship his gods or the statue. He showed them some mercy and gave them a second chance that he didn't have to. And he again reminded them of the fiery furnace. The king even taunts God by saying, then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? And again, these 3 men take their faith and they boldly proclaim their allegiance to God and not the king. They tell the king, A, we don't need to defend ourselves in this matter. B, God is able to rescue them from the fiery furnace. And C, if God does not deliver them, still not going to worship the statue. They have drawn that line in the sand. These men were living out Acts 5:29. Peter and the apostles replied, we must obey God rather than men. They knew that regardless of what men would do to them, they would stand their ground when it came to their faith. They stood faithfully by God because they knew God would deliver them from the fire, either by life or death. This is how faith is supposed to operate with us. This is how we're supposed to behave, trusting God regardless of how God handles our situation. I have had several instances in the last few years where that's come to case. I didn't have a job for a couple weeks back when COVID started, when they weren't hiring teachers. I had been let go from Eastburg football, and when I got let go, I didn't have a job in the teaching side either because they wanted to bring in a social studies teacher to take that football coaching position. I got lucky, and I waited, and I just had faith that I was supposed to be up here, that I wasn't supposed to go somewhere else, and we stayed, Ended up getting another job, which has led me to doing something I never said I would do, which was be in my current position in administration. So we all have those moments. That mine is very small. We had other moments with Canon. Both me and Hannah sat in a doctor's office, and they told us your chance of having biological children is less than 1%. That was a real harsh conversation. We trusted in the process. We started the paperwork to go through foster care, ended up with patience, and even that had hiccups too because she had a brother with her, and we weren't able to give him the level of care that he needed, so he had to move on. And now we've had patience for now 8 years, and I couldn't have imagined then. If any of you had seen me in the hallway when Hannah called me to tell me about Cannon, I had to sit down and take a moment because at first I hung up on her because I thought she was playing a joke on me, and I had kids in my classroom, and I was like, I don't have time. It's not funny. Planning period, you missed it by 10 minutes. Call me later. And I hung up on her, and she called me back. But it's about trusting that God will deliver us through anything that we have. Then we get to the part that we've all done in Sunday school, the fiery furnace. And I like this part because this has a lot more detail than what I remember learning as a kid, and I've really enjoyed getting to see this part this week and kind of connect it to things in life. Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude toward them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual, and commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent and the furnace so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, "Weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire?" They replied, "Oh, certainly, King." He said, "Look, I see 4 men walking around the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods." At the men's refusal to bow, Nebuchadnezzar got upset, more enraged. And it's interesting to see that in verse 19, the king's attitude changed toward them. The king had probably grown fond of them. I mean, they had been promoted to running a very large province within Babylon, which means he probably was in communication with them on a regular basis. And when you're in communication with someone on a regular basis and they're doing a good job for you, you typically tend to like them. And so to have that quick change probably was jarring to the king himself, but also the 3 men. And this is probably why they received a second chance in the first place at the beginning. But now, his attitude being completely enraged, he was determined to make an example out of them. The king ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times at its normal temperature, and this could indicate heating the furnace to its maximum temperature. And it could have been meant as an exaggeration, like the term 1,000,000 times, or most of us are parents in this room. If we've grounded someone, you're grounded forever. You're grounded until I'm done with you being grounded, or that you'll never see this phone again. Those words have come out of our mouths, mine more recently, but at the end of the day, it was probably just an overreaction. But they do heat it to a point that they get close to it, and the soldiers, which are supposed to be the strongest soldiers in Babylon, die from the flames. And we live in Burke County. I burn stuff on a regular basis. I would bet by show of hands, most of you have had a bonfire of some kind on your property. If you've ever built one big enough that you kind of worry about yourself a little bit, yeah, when you get close to it, if there's going to be a spread or an issue, you can feel that heat. That much hotter to kill you instantly, that's a real hot furnace. It's not something I'm wanting to be standing near at any point in the day. So, this just shows how irrationally that we can act when we do things in anger. The only thing burned besides the king's soldiers were the ropes that bound the men, because the author writes they're walking around unbound, which meant the ropes were hot enough that they were gone, but they were unharmed. The fire had set them free but could not touch them. As faithful as these three men were to their faith, you wondered if the text from Isaiah 43:2, written 200 years earlier, would have been going through their mind. And so that reads, when you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flame will not set you ablaze. And what we see is that God has been faithful and kept his promise to the three who trusted him. When the king looks in to watch the destruction of these three men, he sees not three but four in the midst of the fire. In verse 25, the literal interpretation of the king's comment is that the fourth person he saw was the Son of Deity. The soldiers that threw the men in died instantly. I don't know why he's leaping up. If he threw them in, they're gone if God's not with them. The fact that he's able to get up and then see them walking around, it implies that with the fourth man that there was a supernatural being with him. Many Jews believe that it's an angel that's with them. Some Bible scholars have taken the view that it was an angel, with many believing that it's a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ. And so then that moves us to verses 26 through 30. Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the satraps, prefects, governors, and royal advisors crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair on their head singed, their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command, and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Again, you see that capitalization difference between the two in his speech. Therefore, I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against God, the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, be cut into pieces, and their houses be turned into piles of rubble, for no other God can save in this way. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. When the king witnesses this miracle, he calls the men out of the furnace, and they walk right out. The text in verse 27 is descriptive of the men's lack of injury and suggests a first-hand account by Daniel. They are not burned. Their hair hasn't singed, which, again, you're thinking about Jewish men in Babylonian times, so there's a full beard there too. No burnt. They still have their eyebrows, beards, hair on their head. Their clothes are not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. And if you've, again, been around any kind of campfire, you know if you're just standing within 10 to 20 feet of it, your wife's going to make you shower before you go to bed that night. Or at least mine does. So remember from verse 25, the fire was close enough to them to burn the ropes. So the ropes on them are burning off, but their clothes, their hair, everything else not touched. The king praises God for saving the men and acknowledges that God is the one who delivered the men from the furnace unscathed. The king goes one step further by making a decree to punish anyone who says anything against the God of these men. And instead of being executed for treason, verse 30 tells us that they get promoted again. So our astrologers from the beginning don't get what they were hoping for. They get another promotion and they rise up again. And so this moves us towards the moral of the story. The moral of the story is that God is faithful and delivers his people. I have so many examples from my own life, and all of you probably have the same. There are so many times that I shouldn't be standing here in the effect that I am. But here we are. All of us have these things, and all of us have those examples that we can point out to others. We see this most prominently, skipped. We may not always like the way that he delivers us, or we may not agree with his plan, but regardless of what we think, God will deliver us according to his will. We see this most prominently in the speech the men made to the king just before being thrown into the fiery furnace. In the verses 16 and 18, they say, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods and worship the image of gold you have set up." Every day in life, we should strive to have the kind of faith in God when it comes to the struggles we face. The men knew that God would deliver them, but were unsure of how. He may deliver them through a miracle, as he did, or he may deliver them through their deaths and eternal happiness. God was going to deliver them one way or another, but the men had to put their faith in him. This is something that sticks out to me, and we really, going through it, when I was trying to think about what I learned about this in Sunday school and going through youth and my upbringing in church, this was not ever brought to me in this way. And so you kind of get the story, and it was more of one of the miracle stories that goes through the Bible. I wish I would have known this lesson about 25 years before I actually learned it, but every day we have to put that faith. There are a lot of uncertain times before us, whether it be health, whether it be wealth, whether it be anything else. There is uncertainty every single day. Nick even mentioned it this morning. We are only guaranteed the next breath we take, and we're not even really guaranteed that. So having faith that God will deliver us through it helps us a long way and quiets my mind at least a little bit. So I want to thank you tonight. I know that wasn't super long. I am not the talker that Nick is, and I am out of practice in this as I've not been in a classroom for 2 years. So talking in front of people is not back up to where I am. I appreciate you. You will have someone on Wednesday. I was not informed by Nick who would be teaching on Wednesday, but I am in my last 6 classes of graduate school, so I will be gone on Wednesday. And so prayers for Hannah as I finish that up and start preparing my portfolio, because if you've looked at my Google Drive in the last year, it needs a little bit of work. So thank you all for coming tonight. Please have a blessed week. If you need something, please reach out to the church or through the deacon of the week, whose phone number was in there. And then have a great week.